25 years ago, British politics was still a closed world. We knew who the movers and shakers were, but not exactly how they moved and shook. Radio was allowed into Westminster, so at least we could hear the harumphing and grumphing of backbenchers. But the backroom boys who wielded power were still faceless. And then along came Yes Minister and shone a light on that whole world and showed that politics was full of cack. And that's why I'm nominating Yes Minister as Britain's best sitcom.
You know, I'm glad you asked me that question.
Humphrey is not God.
Will you tell him or shall I?
Yes Minister charts the many attempts by Jim Hacker MP to get things done, occasionally with the help of his parliamentary private secretary Bernard, and always against the wishes of Whitehall heavyweight Sir Humphrey Appleby.
I don't think we need to bring the truth in at this stage.
I don't want the truth. I want something I can tell Parliament.
Getting Hacker to do Whitehall's bidding wasn't always easy. But Sir Humphrey never gave up, as he and the series followed Hacker from newly appointed cabinet minister all the way to number 10.
He's the Prime Minister.
Yes, indeed he is, Bernard. He has his own car, nice house in London, place in the country, endless publicity, and a pension for life. What more does he want?
I think he wants to govern Britain.
Well, stop him, Bernard.
The pilot for Yes Minister was made in 1979, but wasn't transmitted until after the general election of that year, in case the BBC was accused of trying to affect the outcome. So already the corporation knew that it had something politically contentious on its hands. What it didn't realise was it also had something extremely funny. And this brings me to my first reason for nominating it as Britain's best sitcom. It was funny, even though it used the driest material known to mankind. Because if you think about it, each episode consisted of middle-aged men talking about things like government expenditure shortfalls and Apple deficits. It was just like no other sitcom.
Well, I don't know whether I really want power.
Bernard, if the right people don't have power, do you know what happens? The wrong people get it. Politicians, councillors, ordinary voters.
But aren't they supposed to in a democracy?
This is a British democracy.
When we started writing Yes Minister, we didn't honestly know if anybody'd laugh at it. We did, but then, you know, we would, wouldn't we?
There's no reason, really, when you think about it, why Yes Minister should have been a hit.
It was unique. As a sitcom, it really was unique.
There's no sex. There's no action. On paper, it's a complete dud. You see, Minister, when money is allocated to the health or social services, Parliament and the country feel cleansed, purified, absolved. It is a sacrifice.
Load of claptrap.
To concoct a comedy programme out of that, and not merely a comedy programme, but one that has so many sharp shafts about the system, our system of democracy, is, I think, an achievement of genius.
It's up to you, Bernard. What do you want?
I want to have a clear conscience.
A clear conscience.
Yes.
When did you acquire this taste for luxuries?
Yes Minister was all about lying and deceit, about being duplicitous while remaining thoroughly charming. And its most charming and duplicitous character was Sir Humphrey Appleby. He's my second reason, because Sir Humphrey is such a brave choice on the part of the writers to have as one of their central characters a civil servant. After all, if every week you're trying to come up with an original, funny, twisting plot, the last thing you need is a man who's determined to make sure that nothing happens at all, ever.
Minister, allow me to present Sir Humphrey Appleby, Permanent Under Secretary of State and head of the DAA.
Sir Humphrey should not merely be preserved in celluloid, he should be preserved in aspic. He's a wonderful caricature of the Mandarin.
It is necessary to get behind someone before you can stab them in the back.
It was a tribute to the way Nigel played the part that he made that
despicable character, this Machiavellian character, attractive, and he made him a kind of emetic ecstasy.
It is not for a humble mortal such as I to speculate on the complex and elevated deliberations of the mighty.
He could have run the whole country without all these tiresome ministers that he had to deal with.
My job is to carry out government policy. Even if you think it's wrong. Well, almost all government policy is wrong, but frightfully well carried out.
He wanted to be in charge, but he didn't want to be absolutely in charge. He wanted to manipulate the people who were.
Frank's got a lot of problems coming up.
Really? He hasn't mentioned them?
Probably because he doesn't know about them yet.
He can justify almost anything.
Smoking-related diseases cost the NHS £165 million a year.
Yes, but we've been into that. It has been shown that if those extra 100,000 people had lived to a ripe old age, they would have cost us even more in pensions and social security than they did in medical treatment.
You know, Sir Humphrey can find rationalizations for things and make sense of them in his own terms. And frequently they're right, which is the awful thing about government. Frequently Sir Humphrey was right.
His character is beautifully drawn in the writing, of course, but Nigel added this wonderful sort of boiling point inside him. You just felt sometimes he was going to explode when things didn't go his way.
Where's my key gone?
You must have a spare.
Where's my key?
The Prime Minister told me to have it removed.
That's not correct.
Would you mind, dear Liz? Nothing to do with you. Thank you.
The most irritating thing he did was his dear ladying.
Would you excuse us, dear lady? Dear lady. Dear lady.
Which was this oleaginous, oily, slimy, patronising kind of soft attack on me.
Can you prove it?
No, it's my antennae.
I think, Prime Minister, that we are in the realm of female intuition.
He was to be sent up and not taken too seriously. You know, we never took him serious, pompous old fool.
Of all the qualities Sir Humphrey looked for in a politician, top of the list was that the politician had to be dead, or at least as inert as this bust. So Sir Humphrey must have been really pleased that his master possessed these qualities more than any other living politician. He's my next reason for voting for Westminster. He's Jim Hacker, MP.
Well, I didn't... All I meant... Oh, God.
Vain, bombastic, obsessed with the press and his popularity, and nursing a Churchill fetish, Jim Hacker still managed to be the only MP we've ever genuinely liked.
What the hell are you talking about?
But as they say, it's a custom more honoured in the breach than in the observance.
Oh, really, Bernard? Must you and Humphrey really always express yourself in this roundabout and pompous way? More honoured in the breach than the observance. Must always distort and destroy the most beautiful language in the world. The language of Shakespeare.
And that is Shakespeare, Prime Minister.
Well, Jim Hacker was a wonderful character because he was a sort of buffoon.
Not just words, it's actually there. It's written.
Jim had to be both stupid and yet credible as a minister, because if you made Jim too ignorant and too silly, everybody would say, well, yeah, but nobody like that in real life would ever become a minister.
Oh, Bernard, which am I supposed to be voting, aye or no?
Oh, no, it's an opposition amendment. It's the second reading.
I don't want to know what it is. Just don't want to go through the wrong door.
Paul always said to me, he said, I know who Jim Hacker is. He said, he's a mouse learning to be a rat.
Typical.
Why not ring Humphrey and tell him you disagree?
Don't worry, I'll see him first thing.
Ring him now.
Darling, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He'll be fast asleep.
Exactly.
Oh, I couldn't do that. What's his number?
His comedy timing was superb, and you only need to look at his double takes or his slow burns as something sinks in.
He's a plant.
Ah. Oh.
Do you understand?
Yes. No.
Paul Eddington is brilliant. He doesn't get the flashy scenes that Nigel Hawthorne got, but he is so good at just one of the great reactors, you know.
Bad news, Bernard?
Yes and no.
Your predecessor, the previous Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, has just died of a heart attack.
Tragic.
I loved Paul's performance. I thought it was a wonderfully shrewd, well-observed, self-deprecating performance. It was very clever because he was scoring laughs against himself throughout most of it.
One wonders.
Yes. What does one wonder?
It was so polished and so precise and so totally different to Sir Humphrey that the contrast was wonderful.
Look at Latin. Hardly anybody knows that nowadays.
Tempora mutanta no sed mutama in illis. This dysfunctional relationship may have been set in high office, but was driven by the sort of everyday office politics we can all relate to. It was backstabbing from the moment they first clocked in.
I believe you know each other.
Yes, we did cross swords when the Minister gave me a grilling over the estimates in the Public Accounts Committee
I
last
wouldn't
year.
say that.
Well, you came up with all the questions I hoped nobody would ask.
Well, opposition's about asking awkward questions.
And government is about not answering them.
Well, you answer all mine anyway.
I'm glad you thought so, Minister.
There's much of the Jeeves and Wooster in Hacker and Sir Humphrey, in as much as you have the slightly silly ass man who's supposedly the boss, and you have the extremely brilliant factotum who really runs things in the background.
Anyway, Minister, I'm sure you know what you're doing.
Humphrey, you only say that when I've made an appalling cock-up.
It was really a symbiotic relationship, that one couldn't possibly have worked without the other. You know, they were two dissimilar organisms who were trying to live together for their mutual benefit. And if one went down, then the other went down.
It's not fair. With Trident, we could obliterate the whole of Eastern Europe.
They want to obliterate the whole of Eastern Europe.
But it's a deterrent.
It's a bluff. I probably wouldn't use it.
Yes, but they don't know that you probably wouldn't.
They probably do.
Yes, they probably know that you probably wouldn't, but they can't certainly know.
They probably certainly know that I probably wouldn't.
Yes, but even though they probably certainly know that you probably wouldn't, they don't certainly know that although you probably wouldn't, there's no probability that you certainly would.
What?
Although Nigel Hawthorne, Sir Humphrey, is Machiavellian, devious and snide and snobbish and all those things, and continually undermining Jim Hacker, somehow by serendipity, Jim Hacker seems to come out on top sometimes, which is very, rewarding for us all.
Prime Minister, you handled it brilliantly. You forced him to resign on an obscure administrative issue of your choosing, rather than on an important policy issue of his choosing. Nobody will support him because nobody will really understand why he's gone. It's a masterstroke.
Yes. It was pretty clever, wasn't it?
Oh, masterly.
Just occasionally, Jim used to win, and then we would get letters with bravo on the envelope and things like that.
You mean you may now leave. If you're wanted again at number 10, you will be sent for.
You mean when?
I mean when. And if.
It's quite interesting that when we were writing it, for one reason or another, it turned out that Johnny was kind of guardian of the soul of Jim, and I was kind of guardian of the soul of Sir Humphrey.
Ah, Humphrey. Sherry?
Yes, thank you.
I think both Johnny and I felt, had we been in their position, we'd have done the same. So we really rather loved both of them, but we did see their faults.